Welcome to my review for Freddy vs. Jason. Now, when it comes to the big villain mashups of the noughties, I was always more a fan of Alien vs. Predator because I'm a long-term fan of both of those franchises, whereas when it came to Freddy vs. Jason, I was only really a fan of Jason, so I didn't quite have the same level of anticipation as maybe some people. But this promised to be an interesting rewatch for me all these years later because just recently I've been binge-watching the Nightmare on Elm Street films, so I feel like I came into this rewatch armed with Freddy knowledge. So did it change my perspective? Well, not really. I thought Freddy vs. Jason was an okay film when it came out, and I still think it's an okay film today. In fact, if anything, rewatching the film with Freddy knowledge has added one more minor negative into the mix, which is that I have no idea where this film is supposed to fit into the Freddy timeline of films from the 1980s. I mean, this doesn't feel like the same town that went through the great child apocalypse from Freddy's Dead. So is this just meant to be a standalone film which has no real bearing on any of the previous films? I don't know. On the Jason side, it's very easy to fit into the Friday the 13th timeline. Jason goes to hell at the end of number 9, and then Freddy brings him out of hell for this film, and Jason 10 takes place much later in the future. Now, like I said, this is an okay film. I like it somewhat, but what bad things do exist about this film are absolute whoppers. So I'm going to start with the negatives because I just have to get in and talk about those things, and we'll do the positives a little bit later on. So let's talk about Kane Hodder, the longest serving Jason Voorhees to date. He played the character 4 times for a span of well over a decade, yet for very strange reasons was not hired to be in Freddy vs. Jason. Now, this is an absolutely bizarre decision for several reasons. Firstly, supposedly the reason given by Ronny Yu for not casting him is that he wanted an extra tall Jason to be in this particular film. Now, I don't know if I'm the only person who thinks this, but I have never watched any of Kane Hodder's Jason films and thought that he looks anything else but massive. I don't know if it's just the way that he's being filmed in those movies, but I've never thought of him as small. Secondly, Jason is clearly a stronger person in hand-to-hand combat than Freddy Krueger, so why would you want to make Jason taller than Freddy? I'm presuming that Robert Englund is taller than Kane Hodder, but why not just have Freddy be taller than Jason and even the playing field a little bit? And it's not like the Ken Kirzinger version of Jason that we get is a really good substitute. If he was, then this whole thing wouldn't be so bad, but in my opinion, he's probably the weakest Jason of the entire franchise. His mask doesn't look quite right on his head. I guess physically he's okay. He's a serviceable Jason at best. This was always going to be a very difficult film to pull off, so I don't get why you wouldn't take the opportunity to score the really easy points, get the basics right, the things that you can't possibly mess up, which is hire Robert Englund and Kane Hodder. My next big issue, and this is Jason again, is this whole thing that Jason is now afraid of water. What? He loves the water. He has spent an entire series using the water to his advantage to kill people. In part 8, he walks for miles through the water to get to New York. In part 6, without missing a beat, he just walks into water and holds his breath for about 5 minutes like a champion swimmer. In part 4, he ambushes 2 people from beneath the water. He protects the waters of Crystal Lake like it's his girl. Why would he suddenly be afraid of water in this film? I can only presume that Ronny Yu just presumed that because Jason, the character, drowned in water to begin with, that suddenly he's afraid of it. Well, that's not the case. I can't believe that somebody in the studio didn't take him to one side at some point during the production and say, you do realise that this character is not actually afraid of water? But I still lay the blame squarely at Ronny Yu's feet. If somebody came to me and said, Midnight Woodsman, well, they're not actually going to call me that. Midnight Woodsman, we want you to direct our brand new villain mashup that we've got planned. It's Hellraiser versus the Children of the Corn. Now, the reason why I've mentioned those 2 particular franchises for this example is because I've never seen a single film from either of them. I know, I'm going to get around to that, but stay with me. Now, what would be the first thing I would do in this situation, assuming I agreed to take on the project? Well, I would binge watch all the Hellraiser films, all the Children of the Corn films, take detailed notes about the characters, Pinhead and the Children of the Corn, so then I could, in a proper informed way, create my own movie that merged the two. I wouldn't just not watch any of those films and make some strange presumption. I'm not just going to sit there and go, well, Pinhead's got loads of pins in his head, so he's probably really afraid of pins and needles. Oh, I know, I'll have a scene where there's the Children of the Corn put pins on the floor and Pinhead looks really afraid. No. I've also got to say that the battles between Jason and Freddy are probably my least favourite parts of this movie, and this is one area actually which Kane Hodder probably wouldn't have been able to improve. I just don't think the two characters are that compatible when it comes to battling against each other. I get why they've been put together, because they both just happen to live under the same roof in terms of who owns what rights. It was possible to have a Freddy versus Jason movie without too much legal hassle, so that's what they went for. But I think Michael Myers would be a much better opponent for Jason. I'm not saying I would want to see a movie between those two. I'm just saying, on the side of Freddy, I think Candyman would be a more ideal opponent for him. Two kind of mythical, not quite human characters battling for supremacy would be quite interesting. The story for that would almost write itself. Somebody in Elm Street would say Candyman's name 5 times, so he would come to Elm Street and there would be this battle over who is the most feared in the town. That could be quite interesting. Again, I'm not saying I would want that necessarily, but I think it would be better than Freddy versus Jason, because when these two are fighting, it does look a little bit kind of silly. I think of Freddy throwing Jason around like a pinball specifically, but most of their fights are just not that interesting to me. I think the first time I watched the movie, I thought it was okay, but certainly on rewatch, I'm just kind of sat there thinking, okay, this is definitely not my favourite part of this film. I get that they would never have had a Freddy versus Jason film where the two didn't fight because people would have been outraged, but I think it would have been a better film if they hadn't have fought. So now for my positives, and I guess my first one would be the fact that Catherine Isabel's in the movie. Okay, time for my second positive, which would be the kills. They are consistently great in this film, all the way through. The bed kill of Trey. I mean, I think the guy's dead by the time that it sort of flips up, but it still looks brilliant. And the killing of Gib in the boiler room. I mean, I personally would have killed Laurie at this point in the story just for a big surprise, but never mind. I still love the fact that Freddy stalks his victim here in the boiler room. It's like a maze of steel pipes and furnaces, just like we got in the original Nightmare. There's no gimmicks, no great graphics or Super Freddy. It's just good old-fashioned Freddy Krueger stalking, even if Jason ultimately gets the final kill. And I like the way that Jason takes care of the rapist. It's just kind of like, I don't want a rapist in my movie. Chucks him away. I like that. And then there's the machete throw through the corn stalks that gets to the guy in the back. I like that one too. They're just great all the way through this film. There's a couple of good ones at the insane asylum where Jason gets his machete stuck in the monitors and there's like an electrocution thing, and then he cuts another guy in half. And I even like the one where Freddy sort of goes and Jason stood behind his victim and gets the kills in this film are just creative and enjoyable all the way through the movie. They're really, really good. There are also 3 really long sequences in this film which I really enjoy. Tellingly, none of the 3 involve a fight between Freddy and Jason. So the first would be at the house at the beginning. I like the fact that some of the characters get killed here. Some of them make it out to be involved in the plot for later on. I love the moment where Gib runs out to the police car with bloody hands and goes, "Do I look like I'm kidding?" It's just a brilliant moment. All the stuff at the cornfield is amazing. We've got character moments at the party. Then Gib goes on a trip to Freddy's boiler room. Jason steps in, gets himself on fire and starts killing people left and right. There's a great moment where he puts his machete in the beer keg by accident and the beer spray just puts him out. But there's just so much creativity going on. And then the third sequence would be at the mental asylum or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of suspense here, more good kills. This is probably the last part of the movie that I truly enjoy, because the final third of the film, where it's more about Freddy and Jason, is sort of where I'm starting to mentally switch off. But luckily there's enough good stuff in the first hour in all those locations I've just been talking about that, I can still enjoy the movie to a point. And I've not mentioned the kill where there's the kid on the porch where he's in a dream and then he wakes up and his dad's dead next to him. That's a nice combo of Jason and Freddy sort of not working together, but they both sort of contributed to the kill in their own way. That was a good one. So if I'm going to move to my conclusion, then this is definitely a flawed film, but it's still annoyingly fun for just about enough time that I certainly would never skip over it if I was on a big Friday the 13th marathon or a Nightmare on Elm Street marathon. I can't imagine that anybody who's not a fan of the two franchises would get anything out of this. You really have to be into Jason and Freddy to enjoy it, I think, or at least one of the two. And I'm not sure if I would ever want a sequel to this. I don't think we'll get one now anyway. It's been, what, 15, 20 years? I think if there ever was to be a sequel, I'd personally like to see more of Jason and Freddy kind of working together on the same side. You know, Jason is the big bad in the daytime, and then there's Freddy at nighttime when people fall asleep. It's kind of a tag team thing, but I don't think they would ever make a movie like this where the two characters weren't at loggerheads, sadly. But I think the best thing about this film is just the spectacle and the splatter. There's enough of it that if you're a horror fan, you can just enjoy it. It's not scary, but it's fun. And would I recommend it? Well, yes. If you're into Freddy and Jason, sure, why not? But anybody else, probably not. Right, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score we have for this. So we've got 1, 2, 2.5 out of 5 for Freddy versus Jason. That kind of ties into what I said at the very beginning when I said it's an okay movie. That's what it is for me. It's neither bad nor good. It's okay. I can watch it, and I tend to now and again. Right, I'll be back soon with a review of the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. That will be my final film in that particular franchise, and I will on the Jason side, I'll be back with a review for Friday the 13th Part 3. That one will probably come first. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.